Hi everyone, this is Nim Holkar. Sorry about the delay in logging in. Was just trying out a few different new ways of doing live streaming, and that took up some of my time. But here I am, and I'll just wait for a bit to make sure everyone gets a chance to log in. As always, you all know the drill. Whenever you join in, please say hi to me because I love saying hi back to you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nim Golkar. I'm an international speaker, author, and life coach based in Sydney, Australia. And one exciting thing that I've shared recently is that my fourth book is scheduled for a late November 2020 launch. So I'm pretty excited about that and racing to the finish line to get the book ready. But more about that later. Welcome to Sunday Chats with Nim, which is my weekly Facebook Live show where I share topics to help you get ahead both personally as well as professionally. And today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, which is the myth of the perfect marriage and whether such a thing even exists, which is why I'm calling it the myth, right? So let me first off let everyone know that I am not a relationship expert. I am not a relationship counselor. The biggest reason I am doing this video today on this topic is because I've noticed that in this modern world of ours, there are so many people who are deeply unhappy or making themselves deeply unhappy because of their relationships. And I find that these people can be so much happier if only they learned or figured out a way to make small changes to their lives, to their mindsets, and their behaviors. Now, there are many different reasons why marriages fail. Today, the video is mainly aimed at those marriages which are pretty much average, not entirely happy, not entirely unhappy either. They're chugging along, right? But these marriages can possibly be fixed, saved, or rescued if the relevant parties make small tweaks to how they react to or interact with their partners. There are many other marriages where there are far more serious problems, where the marriages crumble or break because of serious issues such as abuse, physical or emotional, addiction, infidelity, etc. Those are serious problems, and those problems need to be perhaps discussed with a counselor. They need to perhaps seek professional help. Those are not the marriages I'm referring to today. While we're talking about professional help, there's one point I wanted to bring to the fore. I find that even though we are living in modern times, there still seems to be some kind of stigma attached to seeking external help. There seems to be a stigma attached when it comes to seeing a counselor to help with a marriage, almost as though it is a sign of weakness to ask for help. So today I just wanted to let everyone know that seeking external help is not a sign of weakness. It is actually a sign of immense strength. I remember once talking with this lady who was having a lot of problems in her marriage. And when I suggested, that she should go and see a counselor, she was pretty horrified. And she said to me, she was wondering what her friends and relatives would say and think if they found out that she and her husband had been to see a counselor. Now, this kind of thinking, this kind of mindset needs to change. We need to move away from this kind of thinking. We need to move away from these kinds of fears of society and what society will say, do, or think. When people have something as simple as a headache, they're very quick to pop pills and take medication. When it's something as big as a marriage at stake, so many people shy away from taking external help. So that's all I'm going to talk today about: external help for marriages that are really, really struggling with severe issues. That is not what this video is about. This video is mainly directed, like I said at the start, directed at those marriages which are pretty average, which are struggling with everyday grievances and annoyances, and which can be fixed, saved, or rescued if you just make small, everyday changes to how you look at your marriage, through what lens you look at. Okay, so I'm just going to take a quick pause and say my highs. There's Angie Kurana says, hi Nim. Hi Angie, how are you? Hi Shraddha. Poonam Sood, how are you Poonam? Veera says, hey Nim, good to see you speaking on this topic. Thank you Veera. I've actually had a lot of people write to me and ask me to speak about this. Now, because relationships is not something I typically coach on, I just thought I'll take this opportunity and make a video today through Sunday Chats with Nim and try and give some of my own insights or share some of my perceptions on this particular topic. And there's Manisha. Hi Manisha, how are you? So all those logging in, don't forget to say hi to me because I love saying hi back to you. And if you have any questions or insights that you'd like to share, please do so during the live session. Like I always say, any questions that are asked after the session has ended, I'm unable to answer those questions. Hi Neeraj, how are you? All right, so let's get started. Okay, today I'm going to actually share with you 3 scenarios which are pretty common in the modern day marriage, and I'm going to share with you some very simple strategies or mindsets that can be used to make the situation a little better. Okay, so the first scenario is where you expect your spouse to be a mind reader. And I'm going to give you an example. There was once this husband who walked in on his wife out of the blue and he said to her, I want a divorce. She was stunned. It wasn't something she had expected. She hadn't seen it coming. And she said, but why? What's wrong? And he said to her, surely you would have guessed over the last few months how unhappy I am in this marriage. And she was even more confused and she said, but I thought everything was okay between us. Now, this is a very, very common scenario in many a modern day marriage where a husband or a wife is expecting his or her spouse to be a mind reader, to be able to sense their unhappiness, to somehow simply know. Some people are just bottling away their misery, holding all those negative emotions inside them, crying silent tears, hoping that somehow, someday, miraculously, their partner will guess that the marriage is ending. But you know what? Your partner is never going to guess because, fortunately or unfortunately, we are not mind readers. And those people who are going around their marriages expecting their spouse to be able to read their mind are expecting magical powers that us human beings don't possess. And that is the root cause of so much misery, so much bottled up frustration, so much disappointment, and so much heartache, right? So crumbling relationships don't need guessing games. Crumbling relationships need open channels of communication. So you need to speak up. You need to discuss with your partner. Now, of course, there will be certain relationships where even if you try to open the channels of communication, even if you try to discuss, you're met with just a wall, and you can't get through. That is when perhaps you need third-party intervention. But what I want to mainly reach out today is to those people who are unhappy at the moment because they're hoping that their partner will somehow guess their feelings and will be able to read what's going on in their minds. I just want to let you know that is not going to happen. It's not because they don't care or not because they don't love you. It's just that most people can't read minds, right? So if you're unhappy about some aspect of your marriage, some aspect about your relationship, whatever it may be, you need to speak up. Okay, you need to discuss. And if that doesn't work, then we need to seek external help. So that's the first scenario where you're expecting your spouse to be a mind reader. It's not happening. The second scenario is where a person thinks that my husband or my wife should love me in exactly the same manner I love him or I love her. Okay, so I'll give you another example of another scenario in another marriage. So let's say the wife walks in one day and she says to her husband, I'm sick of this marriage. You don't love me. I'm the one who always remembers every birthday, every anniversary. But you've never till date given me a single gift. When she says that, the husband says, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. Who picks up the kids each evening from school? Who prepares dinner every night? He says. And she yells back, that is not love, that is duty. Again, a very common scenario in many a marriage. Maybe the wife's way of expressing love is to buy gifts for her husband, to express her love verbally or through gifts. But maybe his way of expressing love is something completely foreign to her. If you've ever read that amazing book by Gary Chapman called The 5 Love Languages, you will know that different people express love differently, right? Maybe your partner does not believe in saying I love you half a dozen times each day. Maybe your partner does not believe in cuddling by the fireside and whispering sweet nothings. But that doesn't mean your partner doesn't love you. Maybe they, in their own way, try to make your life easier in 1,000 little ways which you may not have even noticed till date, because all those ways are so small and so subtle, right? So just because somebody does not express love the same way you express love does not mean it stops being love. Just because it is presented in a different packaging, it does not stop being love, right? So remember the time when dinner was prepared and kept ready for you when you walked in exhausted after a long day at work? Remember the drawing of the curtains to keep out the sunlight so that you could have a bit more of a sleep in on a weekend morning? Remember the time he or she clapped the loudest when an old dream of yours finally came true? That is their way of showing love. It may not be your way of showing love, but it does not stop being love nonetheless. So the second thing I wanted to let you all know is that before you make up your mind that your husband or your wife does not love you because they don't do the things you typically do to show and demonstrate your love, I would like you to take a pause and think about it from a different perspective. Are they perhaps showing you that love in a different fashion, in a different way? Maybe it's not something you appreciate, but it's always helpful to recognize that he or she might have a different way of expressing love. All right. And the third and the last scenario I want to talk about is related to what is known as emotional triggers. Now, once I figured out the whole emotional triggers thing, it has truly transformed how I look at any interaction, how I look at any relationship, not just a romantic relationship with one spouse. But once you understand emotional triggers, it will also transform how you interact with your colleagues, how you interact with your in-laws, how you interact with your friends, which is why I wanted to share this particular point in today's videos. So the third and last scenario I'm going to share with you is related to what is known as emotional triggers. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that some people will say exactly those things that they know will annoy you? Have you ever noticed that? Where someone says something even though they know that that's going to enrage you, that's going to annoy you, right? Now, they do that often deliberately because they've figured out what your emotional triggers are. Emotional triggers are actually situations or topics that are designed to bring about a negative emotion in you, such as anger, frustration, disgust, sorrow, fear, right? Now, the problem is you may not be aware of what your emotional triggers are, but the people around you in your family or your extended family may have figured out what your emotional triggers are, and they may unfortunately use that against you. Sometimes people do take advantage of your vulnerability because they know your emotional triggers and you're blithely unaware of it. That's why it's very important to know what your emotional triggers are. Let me give you an example of a husband and wife. Let's say you as the wife, you're particularly touchy about and sensitive about any discussion of the fact that you decided to be a stay-at-home mom. You decided not to pursue your career. You decided to stay at home and be with your children. And any criticism of that decision tends to rub you the wrong way. Now, let's say your husband is fully aware that that is one of your emotional triggers. So, on a day when he wants to really annoy you, he will perhaps deliberately bring up the topic where he compares other women, or he might say how other women are, managing to balance their work and their home lives so amazingly while you have actually done nothing with your life. Now, the minute he says this, right, you just go crazy. You just go crazy and you get into a heated argument and you sob and you feel like your heart is going to break and you feel your entire life is ruined. Now, the problem is maybe your spouse has stirred you up deliberately. Many times people just say things for the fun of it. They just want to sit back and watch the fun. But the problem is that your mood is ruined, but the other person goes around their lives merrily enjoying themselves while you are sitting in a corner, trying to hold back your tears. That is because people know your emotional triggers and you don't. So what I want you to do is spend some time just thinking back to maybe the last 2 or 3 arguments you had with your spouse. When you have half an hour to yourself, just sit down and think about the last 2 or 3 arguments you had with your husband or you had with your wife. Typically, you will see a pattern emerge. Typically, the same things annoy us, the same things frustrate us, the same things sadden us. And you'll begin to see the topics that are designed to bring about that negative reaction in you. Maybe it brings out insecurity, maybe it brings out anger, maybe it brings out sadness, maybe it brings out disgust. But once you know those emotional triggers, then you are in a far more powerful position, because then you can sidestep the trap. Then you can decide which battles to pick, and then you can walk away from the futile arguments. And even if you do decide to argue, once you're aware of your emotional triggers, you're able to have those arguments in a more reasonable and controlled manner than flying off in a rage. Okay, so these were the 3 main points I wanted to share with you all today. Just changing how you deal with these 3 different scenarios, and I've picked 3 of the most common scenarios in sort of most normal, everyday, average marriages. Once you learn how to deal with these scenarios, you'll find yourself being a whole lot happier. Okay, I also find that this is not really a point I have in my list to cover today, but I just wanted to quickly talk about it while I'm on this live video with you all. And that is that I find that many people, whether it's men or women, we're sort of subconsciously expecting the other person, our partner, to be responsible for our happiness. We're somewhere hoping that the other person completes us. Now, that is not happening. No one can complete you. No one can be the source of your happiness if you're unable to find that happiness within yourself. Right? So out of all of those who are watching, listening, if you're currently unhappy with some aspect of your marriage and you're hoping miraculously that you will be happy someday when your partner fixes this aspect of his personality or that aspect of her personality or changes this part of her nature, trust me, even if they do change that part of their nature, you'll find something else to be unhappy about. Because primarily deep down, we are the only ones who can make ourselves happy. I remember I gave a workshop about a fortnight ago, and one of the participants asked me, Nim, when will I find real happiness? And I said, this moment, if you so decide, because happiness is a decision. It's not even a choice. Most people think a choice and a decision are the same thing. They're very, very, very similar, but there is a subtle difference. Happiness is a decision. Once you decide you're going to be happy, you stop depending on the other person to be the source of that happiness. Okay, so Lizelle, you've asked how one reacted to emotional triggers. So hopefully, Lizelle, you got your answer in what I just shared. Emotional triggers, once you're actually aware of your triggers, you don't have to react. Then you're able to respond. Remember, when one reacts to something, it is more negative. It's got a negative connotation. Responding is much more controlled. You're in control when you respond. You're not in control when you react. Right? And Lizelle adds, happiness is a state of mind. Absolutely right, Lizelle. You know, unfortunately, a lot of us know like these quotes that happiness is a state of mind. But so many of us, because we are so busy in our everyday lives, we forget to actually practice it, and we forget to realize how much power we have on finding our own happiness, right? Happiness is a state of mind, and that is so true. That is so true, but more of us need to embrace the truth in these quotes and start living accordingly, right? Many times it is not the situation that makes us unhappy. It is our perception of the situation that makes us unhappy. I often say there is a difference between observing and judging. Too many of us are too busy judging, right? I remember one marriage that ended because this woman was being driven crazy by how her husband chewed dinner, the sounds he made when he chewed dinner. That drove her mad. And it sort of opened a Pandora's box of many other petty dissatisfactions that she had. So what I'm saying is, sometimes we feel compelled to stop observing and we just judge something, right? For example, let's say you are at work and one of your colleagues speaks very loudly, right? So let's say her name is Miss X, right? If you were to say, Miss X speaks very loudly, that is the observer in you, and that's okay. But if you say, Miss X is so annoying, she speaks so loudly, the minute you say that, the minute you give her a label, then you become the judge. Now, the problem is most unhappiness is caused because we're unable to simply observe what is happening around us. We feel the need to judge. We feel the need to label it. We feel the need to say the way someone chews their food is annoying. The way someone throws their clothes and doesn't pick them up behind them, that is annoying, right? We fail to simply observe. We feel the need to judge. And in most marriages, when we stop observing and start judging on a daily basis, that's where the danger lies. Okay? So Saleshni Lata says, very helpful. Thank you, Saleshni. I'm glad you enjoyed. And Bhagyashri says, I can relate to all three scenarios. Thank you. Bhagyashri, I'm pretty sure most of us can relate to most of the scenarios I've discussed today. And Lizelle says, I practice gratitude each morning to promote my own happiness. Very important to practice gratitude. Lizelle, it's a great habit, and it's something I've been doing for a long time as well. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me on this Sunday afternoon. Many of you have been joining me each Sunday for the past so many years, and I'm truly grateful to having your company in this show with me each week. Have a fabulous week ahead. Remember, like I said, happiness is a decision. And once you decide to be happy in your relationship, no one can stop you from being happy, right? Your happiness lies with you. You have the power. Alrighty, so enjoy the rest of the week. I will see you next week with yet another topic to help you get ahead, both personally and professionally. Enjoy. Bye.